The U.S. is struggling to solve its homelessness crisis. The number of Americans living on the streets and in shelters is growing.
This is home. Housing is so expensive and you can't afford it. I would be killing myself to pay rent.
Those rent prices are only increasing, and that means even more Americans will have a difficult time affording housing. Add in record high inflation, and that leaves America's homeless vulnerable. In 2020, nearly 600,000 Americans were left without a home, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Data from the nonprofit organization shows overall homelessness has improved by 10% since 2007. But in 2020, the U.S. saw a 30% increase in unsheltered homelessness. And in recent months, homelessness is reaching crisis levels in major cities across the country. This year, Knoxville saw a 50% increase in its homeless population. Long Beach, California, a 62% increase since 2020. Phoenix, a 33% spike. Homelessness can come in many forms and can impact all ages. In January 2020, 70% of the homeless were individuals. 30% belonged to families with children.
I wasn't able to finish school. That was one of my biggest worries because I didn't know where I was going to sleep after school. So I would rather just stay where I was at the whole day to guarantee a spot.
States and cities have set aside more funding to try to curb the issue. New York has more than doubled its spending to over $3 billion since 2014.
It's official. Congratulations.
Colorado's governor approved $45 million to convert a youth corrections facility into a homeless recovery campus. And in New Mexico, $10 million is going to communities to buy old motels and hotels and transform them into transitional housing. These are just a string of new methods in an attempt to tackle a problem that goes back decades. According to Bloomberg, homelessness first peaked after the Civil War, when veterans without jobs struggled to find housing. Freed slaves struggled to find affordable homes or jobs. From then on, affordable homes were demolished in many minority neighborhoods as part of urban renewal. In the 1970s, investment in public housing started to decline when President Richard Nixon imposed a moratorium on new public housing after he declared them a failure and instead pivoted to housing subsidies. And in the 80s, welfare programs to support those in need were cut under President Ronald Reagan's economic plans to lower taxes for businesses. Bloomberg adds the AIDS crisis that hit the LGBTQ community, a drug epidemic, and mass incarceration of people, specifically Black and Hispanic, also fueled the problem. This was further intensified by policies that favor single-family housing zones. According to the New York Times, most land plots are designed for a single-family house. Many state laws and zoning rules limit the land that can be used to build multi-unit buildings, like apartment buildings, that can house multiple families.
Really is a blend of the trifecta of affordable housing, mental illness, and substance abuse. When you add those three together at various levels for each person, this is what we're facing.
Other states like California and Oregon have taken other approaches and passed laws in recent years to end single-family zoning, so more affordable housing can be built. Some cities like Missoula, Montana have moved towards sanction camps known as temporary safe outdoor spaces.
49% of the people that have come through here are now permanently in either housing recovery or in areas to where we've mended some family situations, but they have not returned back to the system.
In the last year, a number of state legislatures introduced bills that some say criminalize homelessness. In Tennessee, it's now a felony for homeless people to camp in parks or other public property. Some argue this is not the solution.
I believe it's only a small misdemeanor, but with a small misdemeanor and a failure to appear, now you have warrants. Now you can be jailed at any time. Now it's difficult to go walk into a state building or a federal funded building because you're worried that instead of getting help or resources, you're going to simply further indebt yourself to lack of it all.
Others, like Judge Glock with the Cicero Institute, believe camping bans are the right path to helping the homeless long term.
The areas you've seen where it's actually enforced, such as Austin, Texas, you haven't seen a single arrest since the law has been in effect, but you've seen hundreds of more people end up in shelter and services, and that's exactly what we advocate. Having the penalty there, but most importantly, requiring officers and other people to offer alternatives to make sure those people take them up and move into shelter and elsewhere.
And record high inflation is adding another hurdle for Americans struggling to keep up with rising rent prices. For some, those rent price increases are simply unaffordable.
We do see people falling into homelessness because they can't afford rent, and it's not like it's being raised like $30 to $60. Some areas are raising it $200.
According to government data reviewed by the LA Times, new rent leases have increased by more than 11% year over year. And polling from Freddie Mac found a majority of renters saw a rent price hike in the last year. 1 in 5 say they're extremely likely to miss a payment. The severity of America's homeless problem ranges depending on the city and state, but cities across the country are taking action to address the problem. The U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness says the solution is to tackle the housing issue, integrate health care, strengthen crisis response systems, and build career pathways. But this can't be done without building and fostering partnerships to address the root cause of homelessness. Tammy Eswick, Newsy.